Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Movements video on the channel. I am Matthew, of course, joined by my wonderful co-host and best friend.
Callum.
Now we're back with another superhero movie review. Of course, it's our bread and butter, dating back to the channel from when we started. And today it's a review of the latest Venom film, Venom: Let There Be Carnage. Now, strangely enough, we didn't review the first Venom when it came out. I guess when that came out, we probably would have still been at. No, we probably wouldn't have even started the podcast actually. I think we started the podcast in early 2019, and that film must have come out late 2018. So I actually missed it. But we still obviously watched it at the time. We just didn't have the channel to review it or anything like that. So in this review, you probably get a few sort of points about that, and our thoughts on the first film and comparing it to the second film, kind of similar to how we did our Candyman review, if you've checked that out. But yeah, I'll pass over to Calm to explain what this the second film's about and how it connects to the first.
So we got our first glimpse at Cletus Cassidy, aka Carnage, in the post-credit scene of the first Venom film, and this film is about expanding on that relationship, delving into the character of Cletus Cassidy, exploring his romantic history, his romantic future, and his relationship and sort of weird friendship with him and Eddie, and we see that unfold in this very very short film, which I massively appreciate. The film's 97 minutes long with credits, which I think is just perfect.
So rare these days, especially when you
There's
consider
not a wasted second, in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly. Especially when you consider how long superhero films are these days. This one's a real breath of fresh air, honestly. I agree.
I mean, we'll obviously get into our deeper opinions, but I think my opinions are probably going to be slightly more positive than yours. I mean, I'm sure yours probably will steer towards positive, but I love the film. But this was the one where my dad said, I'm done with superhero films. I'll see Spider-Man, but then I'm done for a while.
He's tapping out.
He's not going to see Eternals. He's not going to see the Batman. He's just sick of it.
I can understand the Eternals, to be fair, because the hype for that is kind of low. I think around the community.
It's a bit niche.
Yeah, definitely. But I think I can understand why your dad would feel like that. I'm sort of feel like that myself. I feel like the market of comic book films is flooded, to be honest with you. It's a lot to keep up with, especially when you consider streaming service shows and shows on normal satellite TV and stuff like that. There's a big demand there if you want to keep up to date. Not that you have to, but
yeah, I mean, I'm still watching all the terrible network stuff, and I would say Supergirl is probably the worst TV show that I've watched from start to end. But I've accidentally missed the last 8 episodes, so I just have backdated 8 episodes of Supergirl to watch, which is just going to be
painful.
A horrific couple of afternoons for me. But I just need to know how it ends. I like to be on sort of the inner circle, even though no one I know actually watches them.
Yeah, I see. I get you what you mean. But yeah, just before we go off today's review, thank you very much for everyone who supported us recently. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts on the Venom films down below. We'd love to hear them. They really are kind of a blast from the past in terms of the old sort of early 2000s comic book films for us, I think. So yeah, be sure to let us know what you think of them. So yeah, Callum, I don't know how your notes are organized in terms of are we starting off with Venom or Venom 2? You set the pace, mate, because I'm happy to chip in where I can in either.
Yeah, if you want to go for Venom, I was wondering when did you last see this?
I've only seen it the once. Actually, no, that's a lie. Saw I seen it originally once in cinema and then once on the rewatch, so twice. But just the cinema experience outside of the podcast, really. What about yourself?
Yeah, I think two or three times. Definitely, of course, in the cinema. Did we see this together? Probably.
I think so. I'm not too sure. It came out at a really strange time for me because 2018 was kind of the year of Infinity War, so I feel like every other film in that year kind of got second fiddle to that. I look back, what else was that? Ant-Man 2, 2018 as well. Yeah, I feel like this film went under the radar at the time. Black Panther as well, yeah. I feel like this film really went under the radar especially with the success of Black Panther and Avengers,
Yeah, absolutely. This film opens with quite a comic book accurate telling of the original Venom story. Of course, we were sort of burned as all Venom fans were with Spider-Man 3. It was a situation of it materializing from the sky somewhere with no explanation. But here, which I fully respect, we actually do get the spaceship origin with Captain Jameson bringing it back from Earth, or bringing it back to Earth. I mean, we don't quite see him picking it up on the planet, or the hurtling meteorite, as it seems to have been explained here. Which I think I would like to see, but I do respect, them sort of embracing that level of comic book accuracy when, literally everything else in the film is
Yeah.
quite a divergence.
And I suppose with that, Venom's a reasonably recent comic book edition, going back to the 90s. Like usually a lot of these characters are from the 60s or before that. So I guess the lore in that sense, there's not much to go on, but I do enjoy this film. I think there's a lot to be enjoyed in terms of the vibes of it, the tone, like we said, it is quite sort of early 2000s, Ghost Rider or like, Daredevil or Ang Lee Hulk or something. It's got that a vibe to it, which is maybe why it's kind of a guilty pleasure for me. I can acknowledge it's maybe not the greatest superhero film, ever, definitely not. But I think it, what it does have is it's got heart there. It's got people who clearly care a lot about the character. Like, I think Tom Hardy is great. I really like him as Eddie Brock here, actually.
Yeah, I'm always confused at the choice when, one or even two of the main leads are British, but then they have them do poor American accents instead of just making the characters British, because it's in no way relevant that Eddie or that Carlton Drake are American. It's absolutely in no way relevant to the plot. And you're paying Tom Hardy money, so you may as well have Tom Hardy. And I think that includes the voice. I mean, Venom is a whole different story. I think that voice is absolutely incredible. But then to even create a further level of distinctiveness, having Venom be this raspy American, well, I mean, it sort of goes vaguely Austrian in the second film, but this sort of raspy American voice versus this maybe more timid British would have worked, I think, at distinguishing the two even further.
Yeah, the only Marvel characters that I would demand have a British accent are Professor X and Captain Britain. Like, those are the only two that qualify for me. Professor X with an American accent, it just sounds wrong for me. I don't know. Maybe it
is horrendous. Like,
it is, isn't it?
Because I hadn't seen the 90s X-Men cartoon for 15 years. So whenever I tried to watch that, I was just hideously taken aback. And when I posted about that, or I commented about it on like a comic book movie fan Facebook page, someone was like, "Yeah, you fucking idiot! Like, obviously he's American. He's from New York." And I'm like, "Don't fucking at me.
Don't
okay?
at me, bitch." Yeah, I know.
I just felt a bit a bit attacked there.
Yeah, for sure. I think Tom Hardy, it's like the two superhero movies I've seen him in, like Venom and Dark Knight Rises, like it is two polar opposites. Here like Eddie Brock to me was always kind of a bit of a narcissist, a bit of an asshole, but here he's quite a timid guy, isn't he? He is more akin to that sort of classic Peter Parker vibe, strangely.
I mean, he's incredibly selfish and he's a complete idiot, which I suppose is quite consistent with the Topher Grace version. I don't think he's necessarily narcissistic, but he's maybe just too stupid to see past the 30 seconds of his life that are happening in the next very short period of time.
Sure.
He seems to have no sense of looking into the future. Maybe betraying your fiance is going to make her leave you. Maybe don't be shocked when that happens. And I do think that the entire plot of this film does just play out due to incredible lack of logic on most people's parts. Eddie's boss sends Eddie to do a puff piece on Carlton Drake, despite knowing that he's a stubborn and contentious investigative reporter, whenever he could have just sent, whoever else, wouldn't have put up a fight there. And there's obviously the moment about two-thirds of the way through where Eddie has got the symbiote, but the Life Foundation wants to kill him, so they march him into the forest to do it, even though they've been doing live human trials with the symbiote,
That's
killing
bizarre.
people in the lab anyway.
Bizarre.
Just allowing him opportunity. Especially they knew he had the symbiote, so I mean, they had no reason to believe that he wasn't just going to murder all of them.
Yeah, the symbiotes are a strange one in this film because obviously, Venom is the main one in the comics. Venom and Carnage, really. This film kind of introduces loads of different ones. If I'm correct, it's been a while since I rewatched this. If I'm correct in saying that the only sort of ones that really make it to the end of the film are Venom and Riot, like the other ones die, don't they? So what are your thoughts on like Carlton Drake slash Riot as the villain of this film? Because I do feel like that's really the weak point here. Not that like the performances or anything is bad. It's just by the end it kind of turns into the Incredible Hulk situation of like two CGI monsters like just slugging it out. Which, don't get me wrong, I can enjoy, especially with that film. Yeah, that would be a bad example, but I think it was visually it's dark. It's all like gooey and stuff, and it's more of like it's just not a visually enjoyable watch really. The end in this film, I think it's the furthest thing from that for me. It's a real letdown.
Yeah, it's sort of a difficult situation because he doesn't have much of a rogues gallery to pull from.
Sure.
So
Yeah, I
when you
get that.
say who do you make the villain of Venom's origin film, you would think Spider-Man. But in an instance where they can't use Spider-Man or they're choosing not to, you're kind of just panicking and you think probably Carnage, but I guess we can't cover the sort of the story of Let There Be Carnage plus an origin,
Yeah.
at least within the runtime. So yeah, you do end up with this sort of paper thin villain, despite having like quite a sizable amount of screen time. Because I had noted that he is in it quite a lot. He just speaks in these almost he's quite a bit like I mean I think it'd be fair to say he's a bit like Safin from No Time to Die, where he kind of just speaks in these vague
Metaphors.
generalities where he
Yeah.
thinks he's this
Yeah.
like genius prophet kind of figure, but he's just chatting absolute bollocks. So yeah,
Pretty
it's a
much.
character
Yeah.
that I didn't appreciate, and it does lead to a third act of just CGI tendrils just slapping into each other, which, as you said, is not a visual treat on the eyes.
What I would say is I like the Venom look. Obviously they probably couldn't go for the full Spider-Man aesthetic because a lot of fans would sort of say it doesn't really make sense. That's something we will get onto with the second film, but I think here, I think the design's really really good. They get they've sort of changed the proportions from Spider-Man 3, where Venom was kind of just like a human-sized
Topher
Spider-Man,
Grace-sized.
Topher Grace-sized, whereas here like this is like Hulk size, he's huge. And he's got loads of different cool abilities like that. They managed to swap out the web swinging for more of this sort of like brawler type action, and there's a lot of different things he does really really cool as well. He doesn't just stay with Eddie in this film, which I think is quite interesting. I think that could have got quite boring quite quickly. What are your thoughts on the visual aesthetic? Because I do feel like it does miss the giant white Spidey logo for me personally. But what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the eyes, the teeth, and the tongue are all incredible. But when you sort of go shoulder down, the kind of gooey aesthetic, I think, is definitely you know it's in the right place with Venom, especially. But yeah, when you sort of see they're sort of doing like white veins around the chest rather than committing to the spider, which I mean I understand, but I just think there were a few ways to get around the Spider-Man issue. You could have had a different Spider-Man, or you could say he's in the universe, but not even explicitly say what universe. I think there were workarounds to it that I think they just didn't lean into enough. I am just thinking like I wrote these notes quite a while ago, and I'm just a bit of a bitch in them. I say Riot looks like complete shit, and so does the final battle. Like I would never say something like that these days. I mean, I've said it now, but I wouldn't write it these days. But I was just a dickhead when I wrote this, I guess.
We've changed a lot. We're less harsh these days, perhaps. One thing I would credit this movie for is the great cast of side characters. There's it builds a really great universe outside of the typical sort of MCU or whatever. I'm talking about like Anne, Mrs. Chen, all those characters, Dora as well, although inevitably she doesn't last long. I do really like this Venom universe because it's something refreshing at a time where like every movie is linked together, especially with the Marvel and DC films, and I like something that's a bit standalone. And that, as I say, that'll be a big discussion for the second film, especially. But for this film, it just has a special quality. Like I say, it takes me back to the days of the mid 2000s Marvel films where like it's not great, but it's something different. It's something with heart and passion.
Yeah, and with the cast of side characters, I really appreciated that that they avoided the stereotype of making the new boyfriend a dick. Instead of
Yeah,
really
definitely.
resenting Eddie or getting incredibly jealous, like he just you know combats that with just being sort of an unquestionably nice guy.
Yeah, yeah. Very much this film kind of makes it seem as if Eddie's the other guy, like Eddie is the
Mm,
is the arsehole there. But yeah, I really like Dan in these films, 100%. And I'm kind of glad that this film, uh, it doesn't end with him getting a girl, does it, by any means? So it's not necessarily like a
no.
perfect kind of fairy tale ending there, which I enjoy.
Yeah, it doesn't end with them getting the girl, but there is one moment which I think we should talk about,
Let's do it.
which is when Eddie is parted from the symbiote and it takes over Anne, but wishes to return to Eddie, and moves back to Eddie through the means of a kiss. But we know, of course, like when Venom is, when he has covered over the person, he is in control. So he just wanted to kiss Eddie.
Yeah, that's hey Venom. Venom doesn't discriminate, man. He's a man who just who could blame him. I mean, Tom Hardy, handsome bloke. I was always a bit confused though in these films where this film kind of suggests that the symbiotes can't just bond with anyone, like you have to be compatible. But then they just
Yeah.
fuck that off in the second film, where like Venom just bonds with every fucker in the city. Like I didn't really get what it
I
was. I
mean,
know I know they I know they
I think
explained that like
there's
they get sick and stuff, but I don't know.
yeah. Yeah, I think it's that there's a brief window where he sort of sucks all the life out of their vital organs, but then the perfect match won't have that issue.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that's absolutely grand. Um, it's I'm a bit conflicted in this film. I want to really love it, but I just there's something about it where it just lacks something for me. It does fall in a lot of cliches, but I
Mhm.
think looking back now, I certainly like it more now than I did back then. I think there's a lot to be enjoyed here, and um, and compared to the second one, this one feels considerably longer, I find, than the second one.
Very much so.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I wonder why they reduced the runtime for the second. I mean, I'm glad they did. I think it works in that film's favor. Like you said, it's not really a minute wasted there. And whereas this film, I guess, to be fair, they kind of have to introduce the universe and stuff, these characters. So I understand why it would be a bit longer, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, this film is very much Venom's film, whereas the second film is very much the villain's film. And I suppose with this one,
Yeah,
you have to deal with a lot of
yeah,
exposition and origin, which I guess can be kind of messy runtime wise.
certainly.
The character of Eddie, we've talked about him being kind of this timid, mild-mannered reporter, 100% just cool with consuming human brains
Yeah,
because,
see, I wonder where does that
obviously,
go? I wonder. Does that go in his
well,
stomach or Venom's stomach?
it's a bit strange because I think the distance between like Venom's shoulders and like Venom's crotch area, that's where Eddie is. So like their mouths don't like line up or anything. So that means that Venom has a mouth independent of Eddie. But if he's feeding off Eddie's organs, that includes Eddie's stomach. So that means those brains are going right to Eddie's stomach. And he's just so chill with it. I mean, he's not I mean, his issue. I think his issues are
Tasty.
misplaced. Like he says, "Oh, you shouldn't kill people that don't deserve to be killed." His issue isn't you're forcing me to eat human brains. It's make sure that when I eat the human brains, they're the right person.
I am glad though this film it doesn't go the full way and like it's not like R rated. Is it R? No, it's not R rated.
No.
Is it a
Well,
12 or 15?
it was a 15. But that'd be a PG-13 in America.
Yeah, I'm glad they don't shy away from any of that stuff. I mean, I think it could have been a bit more violent, but
Hmm.
yeah, they don't shy away from it because Venom's not supposed to be a wholly good character, is he? He's supposed to be a bit of a
No.
menace who's got a dark side. I think it would have been interesting instead of Eddie Brock, they maybe went for a Flash Thompson. I'm not. I think Eddie
Absolutely.
Brock. I do like Eddie Brock. It's just the Eddie Brock in my brain is kind of the Spider-Man animated series where he's this sort of hulking bodybuilder. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's a bit of an arsehole. That's how I view it anyway. Maybe that's just my inner child speaking there. I don't know.
Yeah, it is the biggest tragedy of the fallout with the Amazing Spider-Man films is that the actor who played Flash Thompson in the Amazing Spider-Man did not
Yeah,
get to play
yeah, definitely,
Agent Venom
100%.
because he would have been absolutely incredible.
Yeah,
Because
I
if you
agree.
played that, as first act legit war film, and then you deal with the Venom symbiote following that, I think it would have been really incredible.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree.
So Eminem rap, surprisingly good, I thought.
Yeah, it's decent, isn't it? I listen to it now and again, and it's it's not typical Eminem. I remember it got a lot of people didn't really like it at the time. Um, but it is like that's another
I
thing
mean, he
about
is just
this
saying Venom a lot, but I mean, it
Venom,
sounds
Venom,
quite good to me.
Venom, Venom. Yeah, I do quite like the way like it's quite rare that well, maybe not because it seems like more of a Sony thing to have like an artist do a single for the film. Like it definitely happened with the
Hmm.
Amazing Spider-Man 2, I think. And there's been a few other films in there that have like songs written for the film, which I get. It's good for promotion. And I don't get me wrong, I think if you're an Eminem fan, you probably would have went to see the film just to hear the song. I think there's bound to be a few of those people in there. I'm not too sure how this film did at the box office. Did it do pretty well?
Yeah, I mean, it was critically reviled, but then it had quite high audience scores, and then it did very well financially. Especially adjusting for its budget, which was quite low in the scope of superhero films. But I'm just baffled on how to feel about this film because I mean it's not a good film, but I definitely enjoy it. And I would say my favorite scene is probably
Definitely.
him in the lobster tank. Like I just love that
Yeah, it's funny.
that was improvised. I mean, when people say that scene was improvised, they mean like the day of or several days prior, something that wasn't in the script is like negotiated with the director, or, with the uh director of photography. Like it's not just he didn't just jump in a lobster tank. He said, "I'm gonna jump in that lobster tank." So improvised is always a bit of an exaggeration. When actors are sort of hyping up on-set stories. But I just love that.
I hope the lobster's not real. Like, surely it must be like
It was made of chocolate and marshmallow.
really? That's so interesting. No
Yeah,
way. Serious?
yeah. I think they look really incredible.
Yeah. 'Cause I remember in
Which I
that
mean
scene it's
also
moving as
also
well.
proves for it's also more evidence that it wasn't exactly improvised. That someone could like cook
Yeah.
up a
Chocolate marshmallow
perfectly
lobster. That sounds delicious.
tangible, convincing chocolate and marshmallow
That's so
lobster.
funny. That's one of the most interesting movie trivias I've heard in a while. That's very good.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of it. Woody Harrelson, probably one of the most excellent castings of any superhero character.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of his from Zombieland and Planet of the Apes as well. I really enjoy the post credit scene. Like I think it's a really good teaser in the second one. It's just what's the wig? What's the curls? I mean,
It
I
is
part of me likes
horrible.
him. Part of me likes him, and then they kind of go away from it in the second film. But I think he's spot on for Cletus Cassidy. Yeah, that absolutely, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, somehow he sort of sports three looks. He sports this one here, one close to the beginning of the second film, and then one close to the middle of the second film. But none of them in any shape or form resemble the one from the comics. So I mean, I feel like they attempted every other hairstyle other than one that would probably actually suit his head.
Yeah, yeah, it's bizarre. It is bizarre. I do feel like he's definitely a depart. Both Venom and Carnage are a departure from the comics, but not in a bad way. Like
Yeah,
I think they're probably. I think Carnage is probably a bit. Woody Harrelson's probably a bit older than typical. For that character,
yeah, I'd
not by
imagine so.
much, but definitely there. I think the castings for these films generally are really good, though.
So if with that, we've talked about Carnage, Cletus Cassidy. Did you want to smoothly transition into
Yeah,
talking about Venom? Let there be carnage.
yeah, absolutely. And the first thing for me I noticed about this film is the tone of this one is a lot more humorous than the first one. The first one takes itself a little bit more seriously, whereas this one there is a lot of jokes. Like not all of them land, to be fair, but it's more of a humorous Venom. Like you can tell they're a bit more comfortable with the character. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that there's a lot more levity at the villain's expense, especially. That they're playing Carlton Drake in the first film very earnestly, despite it being, a character with absolutely zero depth.
Yeah,
I think there's a lot you can forgive a lot in a screenplay, provided the film makes a joke about it. If he sort of mocked this guy as being, nothing more than like, a paper thin personality CEO type, I think there's more room to forgive there. But here, I absolutely love Carnage. I think he could not look any better. I think it's one of the best, one-to-one translations of,
yeah, it looks great.
how a character looks in a comic. I think he, I think the visual effects have taken a massive step up when you compare Carnage and Riot, and I think Carnage just looks incredible.
Yeah, no, completely. And I really enjoyed the Cletus Cassian Scream romance. It is quite a Carnage heavy film, this one.
Yeah.
There's because a portion of this runtime, which is limited, as we said, is Venom and Eddie are separated. Venom bonds with loads of other people, and Eddie's kind of left on his own to do this sort of investigative work. So it very much is, Cletus Cassidy Scream's, story for the first half. What was your thoughts on that in general?
Yeah, I thought there's obviously many dimensions to that story. But I think somehow they both come out of it very likable. I greatly appreciate being given a lot of time with those characters. I think there are moments where your heart really breaks for those characters despite them doing these awful things throughout. Personally, I think this film is miles better than the first one.
I agree.
I think a lot
Yeah.
of people are sort of saying that it's both aren't that great. But personally, I think the first one is a very enjoyable mess. Like I could personally watch Venom right now, and I would still thoroughly enjoy it. I think it is not a very good film that I really enjoyed watching. This one I genuinely think is a good film, which I don't think is the general consensus on it. I think the third acts are just completely incomparable. In this one, that there's far less nonsensical tendril slapping. You can make sense of everything that's happening, which I think can be said for the entire film, which could not be said for the first Venom.
Yeah, I agree with everything you've said there. I think this film is better in terms of CGI, action, character choices, on what they do there. I've never been more glad for a film to be so short in my life, and I don't mean that in a bad sense. And that I wish it was over. I just think they didn't waste any bullshit with anything else. Like they do what they're supposed to do with the characters, and they do it well. Do you know what I mean? So, it doesn't waste any time getting bogged down in other stuff. And I generally think like it doesn't take itself too seriously. Like it's got a similar vibe, a Zombieland or something, like that, where you can grasp that there is consequences for the characters here. They're not invincible, but I think it balances sort of like the terrifying nature of Carnage as well. And there's some really great sort of like comic book panels sort of scenes where like there's one specific scenes where normally I wouldn't really like when a character says the title of the film to the camera, but there's a really great moment where Carnage does it, and there's like huge bolt of lightning and stuff, and I think that's pretty cool. I quite enjoyed that. It's not something I usually would, but here I made an exception just because it is so sort of self-aware, and it might be a bit of Deadpool actually, in the sense that like it is just like non-stop action with jokes and stuff. But yeah, I really enjoyed a good time with it.
Yeah, I mean, on the Zombieland comparison, the first one was directed by the Zombieland director.
Well, that makes sense. I didn't know that, so
You know, and then
that makes sense.
this film, obviously Andy Serkis is the director.
Yeah.
Tom Hardy chose him for his knowledge and expertise on CGI characters. But I suppose when you have established those characters already, I guess it doesn't really matter past that point. Because it's just continuing with the vision of the first film. Did you feel like this was uniquely directed, or visually or
Um,
tonally different from the first film that sort of distinguished it?
I think it was totally different, but if you had told me this is the same director as the first one, I wouldn't necessarily be surprised. It doesn't necessarily scream to me that this is like an Andy Serkis production or anything like that. I think that's kind of what you're asking, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
But that's how I felt about it.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. So before we move into spoilers, I must ask Matthew, is this film for you a massive hit or a piece of shit?
It's got to be a massive hit, mate. I did realize I've kind of forgot about that rule. It's been a while since we've done one of these, so like I totally forgot it. Like I just went to describe a great scene involving Carnage. I apologize about that. I hope I didn't say anything else, did I? No, I didn't think I did.
I mean, you can take anything spoilery out in the edit, I suppose.
Yeah, I can do that. It's a massive hit, mate. Like we're saying, it's very different from the first one. This film, I generally do agree with you. I think it's a good film, not perfect, but it's really solid. I think if you go back and I would say this film's got great rewatchability to it. It plays out as kind of this sort of detective mystery at times as well, and trying to uncover the what's happening between Scream and Cletus Cassidy. So I really enjoyed that, and of course, they introduce what's it, Stephen Graham, yeah, I really like him, and this he does slip into the Liverpool accent at times, but I'm a big fan of his. I'm a really big fan of his, so yeah. massive hit.
It is also a massive hit for me. As I said before, massively respect a film that can pull off a good story in 90 minutes, which I personally
Definitely,
believe
definitely.
was achieved here. I think Tom Hardy's really refined the role. The character's a lot more likable. I mean, of course, a character doesn't need to be likable to be good, but in a film like this, I think it definitely helps. Uh, Venom's a bit of a prick, obviously, but the voice is really incredible. The CGI is a massive step up from the first, especially when I think you put Riot and Carnage side by side. Uh, I wasn't sure that I agree with you. I wasn't sure that I felt a visual distinctiveness between this and the first film to recognize that as a different director. Like it does seem like a continued vision from the first, which I mean depending on how you look at it, that could be great. That's consistency across the films, or that's not so great. There should be a director's style. I suppose that's open to personal taste. I suppose I prefer consistency because if it looked and felt completely different, it would feel quite jarring, especially if you maybe shotgun them back to back. But I think great film. I was going to say incredible. I'm not going to be that generous, but I thought the romance between Scream and Carnage, fantastic. The acting from Woody Harrelson especially, amazing. So, did you want to move into
Yeah,
spoilers?
yeah,
I
definitely.
just have a few pieces to say. Shocking decision in the opening scene to have Woody Harrelson voice the teenage version of his character.
Yeah,
Bizarre.
yeah, it was bizarre. I think the teenage version of the character looked exactly like Cletus Cassidy from the comics for me. I wouldn't be opposed to that actor being used more. To be honest with you, for that character, it was an unusual situation. I can't recall any time I've ever seen that before. Um,
I was watching what's the Curious Case of Benjamin Button, and for
yeah, I
like
know that Brad Pitt
for
voices
like
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 young.
that makes sense to me because he's meant to have been born an old man essentially, but Kate Blanchett voices like the 13-year-old version of her character, who's played by one of the Fannings. I think it's Elle Fanning. But bizarrely they've voiced it over with Kate Blanchett playing a 13-year-old. Like it is,
Do you like
it's
that
just
film?
bizarre.
Do you like that film?
Uh,
It's
I
weird,
watched it
isn't
a
it?
few weeks
It's
ago.
fucking
Yeah,
weird.
I hadn't seen it since my childhood, and I know that it had won quite a few Oscars. So I thought, okay, because I always had this perception of it as being this like you know sort of schlocky genre film almost. Like I thought it wouldn't have had a good reputation, but then I heard about all the Oscars it had won, and I thought I'll give it another go. It's 3 hours long. I think it is it's very The Notebook, and like it's a lot of Southern people talking about how they've you know had this great romance, but it's a lot of just people having like boring conversations, and the only reason that they're together is because they were brought up in a similar location. Like you see a lot of that in romance films of portraying that era where it's like we were made for each other because we were neighbors, and I'm like maybe go a few roads outside your or outside your basic proximity. It was very much in that kind of tone, and I don't know that it was for me. I think the visual effects are
It freaks me out.
revolutionary.
It freaks me out. Like to be honest, sometimes when I was little, I was younger, like it freaked me out. Um, it's a good film. I do enjoy it. Back to Venom 2. This film, like we said, Venom bonds with a lot of other people in the city here. I was just wondering, I was kind of caught in two minds, like in a way that can strengthen him and Eddie's relationship by saying, okay, this is how good they are, that they're a match for each other. Whereas I was kind of also caught in a similar train of thought that maybe it weakens the special quality of their relationship in the sense that Venom can just fuck off and match with anyone, because you can see like he's kind of thriving in this like nightclub, everyone loves him. Whereas with Venom, whereas with Eddie, it kind of feels like he's not at his greatest potential sometimes. I don't know. I felt like that. What about you?
I mean, I think if it proves that he could be with other people but chooses to stay with Eddie, I
Yeah,
suppose
yeah,
that's
that
indicative
strengthens
of
it.
of how,
Yeah,
how special it is, and how much they seem to love each other, which is sort of the declaration that's made by the end of the film. I know you said that Stephen Graham sort of slips into his natural accent, but I think one slip into his accent is still better than kind of a consistent, uh, you know, bizarre strange accent from Tom Hardy throughout the entire film.
Mm.
I'd say Stephen Graham, his accent is on point 95% of the time, and when it's on point, it's by far the best fake American accent within the film. But I mean, even watching interviews with Tom Hardy, you're kind of like, what accent does he even have?
Yeah,
Like I
because
went,
it doesn't sound British at all.
yeah, because I went to the comments of an Instagram video where he was on one of the BBC radio shows where they get kids to ask questions, and they were asking him about working in the film industry, and just every single comment, even from like professional, like verified accounts, were saying like, what is this man's accent like? It's it's Jamaican and English and Scottish all at the same time. And I mean,
Yeah.
like I suppose I couldn't really disagree.
Yeah, he's got an unusual sound, especially with Bane. Like it is so English, like British when he's Bane, and then here it is quite unusual. I like I said, I find it so strange when like just why does a character have to be so American? Like I get it if it's Superman or something, or Captain
But
America, where
like,
you have like where that's integral.
why
But
does Doctor Strange have to be American?
yeah, yeah, it's silly. Like I don't even think Spider-Man particularly has to be American. Yeah, I think Tom Holland would have been okay doing his British. I would have been a bit strange given that the whole red, white, and blue costumes thing. But
Bloody hell, I'm from
I'm
Queens.
from Queens. I don't know, like because yeah,
That,
Aunt May,
that was not me giving my 100% to the English accent. I apologize.
because Aunt May's kind of got a little bit of an English vibe, in my opinion. Obviously, Rosemary Harris was
Oh,
from
yeah, of course.
the British Isles, so um, yeah, I don't know. A lot of characters I feel like they don't have to be American. It's just they're forced to do American accents, which is a risk sometimes. Which is as the case here.
Yeah, because I think Benedict Cumberbatch is a stellar actor
Oh, he's
when he doesn't
first
have to do an
class.
American accent. Because I just think it's just an unnecessary restriction to put on a person. Like when the character I think obviously when you're playing a historical figure, you need to reflect where they came from, and replicate the voice as closely as you can. But
Yeah,
it with the comic book character, there's a lot of malleability, around uh you know changing how they look, maybe gender bending the character. So I mean, I don't know why you could go to those lengths, but you couldn't change what country they're from.
yeah,
It
definitely.
just seems like what one step that's very easy and would accommodate a better performance.
Yeah, 100%, 100%.
I am greatly disappointed that they killed off Carnage in this film, especially. Because we obviously also see that Shriek is killed, but I think the Carnage death is the one that really stung. Because I just think that they could have saved him for a Spider character event film. Obviously, with the end of this film, we tease that Venom has now entered the MCU. With hopefully with Spider-Man No Way Home, we're seeing the introduction of past Spider-Man. Definitely seeing the introduction of past Spider-Man villains from the previous universes. And there's sort of rumors of uh Null, the character from the comics, who I believe is like the leader of the hive mind of the Clintar. There are rumors that that's sort of the next big Spider Verse event, and I really feel like Carnage could have played a role in that. And I just feel like it's a real example of wasted potential.
Yeah, it's interesting as to I always thought that because Venom, I think in this film he eats Carnage, right? So I'd be
Yeah,
interested to see if that ever come. Like they could easily bring him back. I think there and just say like, oh yeah, he just escaped or something. I think they could do that. But the major talking point of this film for me is the post credit scene. You mentioned it there. It's a pretty huge deal breaker, like not deal breaker. It's a game changer, really, because you know I think with Marvel, coming out the other day and changing the release dates for a lot of the films, Spider-Man's not one of them, which, for me, that all but confirms that it's coming out this year. Like they're not going to change it now. I think they would have changed it with the dates of the other films for me.
I
Um,
suppose.
but I mean, surely Venom must be in that film in some capacity. Otherwise, why tease it? You know what I mean? It seems like a very strange thing to do right before the Spidey film comes out. I mean, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, there's a lot of questions because obviously when he's transported, we see on the TV, the live footage of the end of Far From Home, which is set, several months before the events in No Way Home, which appear to take place at Christmas in comparison to the end of the summer. So Doctor Strange's spell, to our knowledge, seems to take place in in December, hence the
Yeah.
sort of wintry vibe of the Sanctum Sanctorum. But then if Venom is transported due to the spell, why has he been transported to the end of Far From Home and not the events of No Way Home? Unless, there is just,
Maybe it's just
time
recycled TV
displacement.
footage, I guess. I don't know. I
Yeah,
suppose, do you think it's
it
Doctor
could be
Strange?
that. I mean, there's so many questions, and I feel like the only place to answer it is No Way Home, surely. I mean, why would you answer that question Venom 3? I don't think at that point, they'll probably have closed the door on the majority of the multiverse saga.
Yeah.
So to leave him stranded in the MCU for Venom 3 when he already has such a strong supporting cast, why would you make Venom 3 a film where he's in the MCU? I mean, I suppose then you have the situation of him being able to hunt down Spider-Man, but then I feel like you're then probably taking away from the intended plot of Kraven the Hunter. Like I just feel like there's a lot of hurdles and confusion around this, because I mean, you know a question is, what does this mean for his films and his supporting cast? But also, is Morbius in the Venom verse and then is transported into the MCU, or has he always been in the MCU? And if he's in the Venom verse, is it just that Michael Keaton is just a Toomes variant? Like, does he just look the same, as Adrian Toomes, as Michael Keaton in the Venomverse and the MCU? What do you think about Morbius? Because this is a film we just haven't talked about because it's been delayed and
Yeah.
delayed and delayed.
Yeah.
But do
The
you
hype's
think
not the
it's
same.
doing it in the MCU proper? I mean,
I
that's
kind
sort of
of
the cleanest answer.
I hope they don't bring that kind of thing. I really hope they didn't bring Venom to the MCU, to be honest, because I kind of like it being its own thing with its own side of characters. I would like if the MCU kind of, if you are going to introduce Morbius and Venom, have them go back to their respective universes after the film. You know what I mean? Like I quite like, that leaves the door open for them to come back for a future threat if needs be. Some of how Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse ended, where the Spider-Men and women went back to their own Earths. Really, I like that, but yeah, I don't know. I think the Venom end credit scene is such a weird thing to include at such a weird time that I think he must be a reasonably big part of the Spidey film, because if I'm correct in saying this is the first sort of multiversal thing in a Marvel movie, really. Technically, apart from Loki, I
Yeah,
guess, but this is the first kind of transfer of one character from one universe to another, I guess,
yeah,
which is strange. So, yeah, it's a pretty major thing, actually. I think it's gone a bit under the radar, actually. Um,
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I've heard a lot of different things about that. I'm not sure whether he's going to be. I'm not sure whether I like him in the Sinister Six or not, because I kind of think like Eddie Brock would probably say no. You know what I mean? But
Mm.
I don't know. Remains to be seen. I don't think he'll be in it loads, but I think he will be in it to a certain capacity. I mean, I think he'll definitely bond with Spider-Man to get that, iconic moment or something. Like
Mm.
that's bound to happen.
Yeah, I am just there's just so many questions, and I don't think we're going to get the answers to them.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I think Morbius just exists in this weird purgatory where, narratively and visually it makes sense to be in the Venomverse, and it feels like the kind of film that Kevin Feige wouldn't let be in like the MCU proper unless it was like retroactively made part of the multiverse. But then, how is Michael Keaton in it, and then how would Morbius potentially play into future Spider-Man films if he's not in the MCU? Because he's a character that it kind of has, his character is in Spider-Man comic books, but he's not really. Like Venom is like a Spider-Man character, and he's the symbiote, sort of built off of the Spider-Man powers. But Morbius, the Living Vampire, doesn't really have enough of a connection to him to be like in a Spider-Verse movie. I don't think.
I feel like I feel the same. I kind of agree and disagree, because I feel like
Just because like you're
definitely
here,
he's
like
not in the
here are all the
Spider
web swinging characters and a
a
vampire.
vibe. Yeah, I agree with you in that sense. I just find it so difficult to do a Michael Morbius film without Spider-Man. Like it seems like such a boring character to do a film about. And that's it. Sorry to any
Oh,
Morbius fans out
absolutely.
there. Like I'm just not sure that character is enough to like sell a TV show, never mind a film, to be honest. Like it's a really
Yeah.
niche character to do. So I think in the same way,
But
I
also
think it
because they
is.
picked Jared Leto.
Yeah, I mean, uh, I don't know if I'll even see that film when it comes out, man. It's just not my thing at all. I
You're
don't know.
going to.
We're going to, but yeah, I mean, I don't have much more to say in Venom 2, but yeah, it's just got me even more excited for Spider-Man, which I didn't think was possible. Like I would have thought were going to get a second trailer soon, maybe before
Mm.
Eternals comes out. Who knows?
Yeah, but I mean, with Morbius, Venom was a character he's never been like crazy silly, but they made him the most silly version of himself for the film, whereas they've gone the complete opposite with Michael Morbius. Like, he's meant to be like this, disco collar wearing, uh, sort
Yeah,
of, very, very silly villain, and then they've just gone like with the most bland color palette, and it's just like earnest Jared Leto, just and I think it's gonna be either incredibly mediocre and like just painful,
I think it could be quite
or
funny. Like it could be quite ironically funny.
terrible.
Yeah, it could be
Yeah,
so
if it's
bad.
terrible, it'll be funny. If it's just mediocre, like, why did you make this?
Yeah, definitely.
It's just gonna be a huge waste of time. And I feel like I'm not I'm not smelling sequel vibes from it, because I think it was meant to come out before Venom 2, I think initially, but then with all the pushbacks and all the pushbacks, Venom 2 landed before it. And I think if they really had confidence in it, they would have figured out a way to have it out before they
Yeah,
ended up having it. Because I
yeah,
mean, like, obviously we've been seeing new films in the cinema since June, and a lot of movies have confidently come out, in that time since, and done very well at the box office.
certainly.
So I feel like, pushing it to, I think by now I mean, it's January or March or something. I think it's maybe
Certainly next
March.
year, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's March. I mean, nobody's talking about that. When they're talking about, oh my God, Doctor Strange. I mean, up until about a week ago, yeah, or like 3 days ago, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness and the Batman were meant to come out in the same month. Uh, and I'm also pretty sure Morbius, but weirdly enough, wasn't in the same conversation.
Morbius is just gonna get killed, isn't it? It's just gonna get absolutely crushed by
Yeah,
every film.
let me have a look to see what the release date is. I do think it is March.
Yeah, because as we said, the Marvel came out and pushed a lot of dates back. I think, for a lot
Mm.
of their films, pretty much pretty much every single one apart from Spider-Man. I think if I'm correct in saying, I'm having a look at dates here myself.
Yeah, Morbius is actually the 20th of January, so it's carved out a little month for itself. But January is famously sort of where movies go to die, because people see
Yeah,
movies at the
yeah.
summer and at Christmas, and there's certain dates that sort of line up that are an exception to that rule. But January is sort of the dumping ground for films that companies have no confidence in.
Yeah, I mean, looking here, the 2022 slate is stacked. You've got Doctor Strange, Thor, Black Panther, and then 2023 is the Marvels, Guardians 3, and Ant-Man, and then Fantastic Four doesn't really have a release date yet. So,
Mm.
um, yeah, I'm really excited for that. That slate is pretty good. I'd imagine it's coming around the time for them. By the time this time next year, I'd imagine they're going to release the slate for after that because, um, once once we get past the initial 2022, there's not much really after that. So I think they're probably going to have to release some stuff soon. I'd imagine we'll probably get a Doctor Strange trilogy, Black Panther trilogy, Batman, all that stuff, finish off those ones and maybe start some new projects. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I'd say Blade is probably coming out October 2023,
Yeah, I forgot about Blade actually. Yeah, that's a good one. That's
which
a
is
fun. Yeah,
not a movie I'm excited for, because I've seen the Wesley Snipes ones, and it feels like it's just going to be that again. Because I mean, there's two versions of Blade. There's the original version who's like British and he's wearing these like insane brightly colored costumes, and then there's the version that came after the Wesley Snipes film version where he's wearing like a leather trench coat, and he's wearing tactical gear, and he has like a fade and sunglasses. So there's a very there's a visually distinct version of the character that originated from the film, and I feel like they're probably just going to have to commit to that, because they would just be sort of laughed out of the industry, I guess, if they sort of did the true to the very original comics version.
they could do
But I
Blade
feel
with
like,
Morbius. I think very easily if they wanted
yeah,
to.
yeah, very, very easily, because I mean, I think in the comics, Blade initially wasn't actually a vampire. I think he was, just the guy who hunted vampires, and then he was bitten by Michael Morbius, who turned him into a vampire. Which is why he sort of has, you know, because Michael Morbius isn't like a legitimate vampire, he's like a vampire made by science. I think that meant Blade then, had certain abilities to, like, he could still walk into the daylight and everything. But I just hope there is, care and attention taken to making them distinct from the Wesley Snipes versions, because I think,
Yeah.
beyond the first film, I know people like the second film, but I'd say the first one is my favorite. But then I'd say they sort of drop off in quality there. I just don't think there's a huge scope for, like, once again, it's character with not many, like, rogues galleries. Like, it's just vampires.
But Blade
You
falls under
know,
the same category as Ghost Rider for me, where like I sometimes forget that's a Marvel property. Like I totally
yeah.
forgot about Blade, to be honest.
I mean, Ghost Rider, like, fights the devil, and then that's it. Blade fights vampires. Like, what do you do beyond one film? I think that
Yeah.
was, evident in the original Blade trilogy. That, like, where do you
I
go?
think Marvel's
Oh,
really
we
going to
make we
struggle
make
with
bad films.
villains. I think Marvel's really going to struggle with villains because they've kind of used all of them up so quickly. Like I look back at some Marvel films and like using two villains for one film seems insane to me. Like
Hmm.
like I don't know, seems bizarre. I think they really can't afford to do that anymore. Really, to be honest
Yeah,
with you,
I
because
I I
unless you
think
create new ones.
I think the right choice is probably have the first film be Blade fighting vampires, and then subsequent films are, sort of the soft team up kind of films, like,
Yeah, definitely.
Captain America, the Winter Soldier.
Yeah, for sure. On that note, mate, do you have any more to say on Venom?
No, no, nothing else.
If you're gonna give it a rating out of 10, I guess, just to
Ooh,
conclude, what would you give it?
that is a struggle, because I do think it's genuinely good. What are the so we've had Black Widow this year, which was fine. We've had the Suicide Squad, which was funny, but I think maybe retroactively not as great as I originally thought. I think it's probably my favorite superhero film of the year, which is bizarre that I'm saying that, because I was kind of excited for it, but I had uh the expectations equivalent to the first film, which were, middling. And I enjoyed it, but I can't argue its quality. But here, I would genuinely put my foot down and argue the quality of this film. So I'm gonna give it a completely arbitrary 8.
Yeah, I'd have to concur with Nate as well. I think if we're gonna go for the comic book films this year, what is it? Black Widow, Suicide Squad, and this. I think have we missed any out there? Shang Chi as well.
Mm,
I think I'd probably go Suicide Squad, Shang Chi, Venom, and Black Widow. Still, still, all those are pretty good. But yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I think it's a lot better than the first one, and I hope they do a third. I really do. I hope they just don't neglect the character of the MCU stuff and forget about all these
mm.
really amazing side characters in this world they've created. So yeah, I
Oh,
had a
I
good time
forgot
with
to
it.
mention, that they introduced toxin in this film. We talked about Stephen
Yeah,
Graham's character.
yeah.
But by the end of the film, we see sort of his eyes light up, and in the comics, he's a symbiote himself, toxin. And just stop making Venom films if it's just going to be
The
Venom
same
fighting another
thing.
symbiote.
Yeah,
Because
that's a
I,
good
I
point.
can't I can't see it again. And then I saw, in the Wikipedia of this film, that, the sequel intentions are to bring in, I think it's a character called Grudge or Grunge, and he's like a symbiote dragon. I suppose that would be the most interesting option if you're still going to do a symbiote, but just sack it off,
Yeah, I
honestly.
agree.
Like,
Yeah, it's a bit tedious now, I think. Yeah, for sure. I
I
mean,
mean, like, you can't make three, like, final action sequences look
surely not.
different enough across three films with, the same fighting techniques. Like, it's always going to be them, like, ripping each other out of the symbiote, and then it's their human forms fighting each other, with
That's the
with
problem
the
that Hulk
symbiotes fighting
has.
each other.
That's the problem that Hulk has
Yeah.
as well. Aside from like the leader and absorbing man, like the main Hulk foes are just other Hulks. You know what I mean?
Mm.
It's a problem there. But that being
Which I
said,
think is a great workaround for, like, the She-Hulk series to subvert that by just being like a comedy legal series. Like,
yeah,
I think that's
definitely.
a perfect workaround.
Yeah, definitely. On that note, that wraps up another review in the channel podcast at this stage. Thank you very much, Colin, for your time today. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for yours. We'll leave our link for our email and time code. Well, not time, well, time codes. You probably don't really need them anymore. And our iTunes link and stuff in the description. And check out our other podcasts as well. We've done a few recently, including what if you're into Marvel stuff. So yeah, hope you guys are all well. Hope your family and friends are keeping safe and well too. Take care, everyone, and bye bye.
Bye bye.